What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. Well, later on this morning, we will have Nintendo with an Indie World presentation, and of course, there's a certain title that has come up once again, a highly anticipated game, and will we finally see it today? Well, we'll go over that here today. Also, we are going to be talking about Ubisoft, who has now responded to the Star Wars Outlaw situation around certain content being locked behind some of the more expensive editions, and we have a pretty major game sale going on right now, and yes, that's for physical copies of actually some pretty new titles, so we'll check that out as well. So if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button, helps out a ton, and if new here to the Spawn Wave channel, make sure you subscribe down below, and of course, members for the channel do get Newswave early and ad-free. If you would like to learn more about that, click the join button down below this video. And we're gonna start today with Xbox Game Pass games for the second half of April. We'll head over here to news.xbox.com. At the top, starting today, Harold Halibut, that's Cloud, PC, and Xbox Series X and S, as well as Orcs Must Die 3, Cloud, Console, and PC. Moving to April 18th, tomorrow, EA Sports NHL 24, that's on console through EA Play. Moving to April 23rd, Eiyuden Chronicle 100 Heroes, Cloud, Console, and PC. That is a day one release, and one that I've been looking forward to for quite some time now, so yes, I'll be downloading this right away and checking it out. Moving up to April 25th, another Crab's Treasure. That's Cloud, Console, and PC, and I have been curious about this game, especially since like the first thing they describe it as right here, a Souls-like adventure set in a crumbling underwater world. All right, hey, it's going into Game Pass. I'll give it a download and see what we have there. Moving to April 26th, we have Manor Lords. That's game preview on PC. April 30th, we have a Nice Death, Cloud, Console, and PC. Game Pass Core also getting some new additions here. This, of course, is like the base tier that really replaced Xbox Live. Deep Rock Galactic, Superhot Mind Control Delete, and Wreckfest will be added into the library that's already there. And really looking at this, not a bad way to close out April. Really, for me, the big one would be Eiyuden Chronicle, but also another Crab's Treasure. Interested there. So a pretty good way though to close out April with some of these games going into Game Pass. Also, we talked about the PS5 Pro yesterday with some new information, and there was one other bit of info that I wanted to point out, this over on The Verge, where they say the PS5 Pro will have an Ultra Boost mode that will help VR modes run at a higher frame rate, and games with a variable resolution may render at higher resolutions. Overall frame rates may be more stable in certain games too. So this is essentially pointing out the fact that even if there is no patch that makes it quote-unquote PS5 Pro enhanced, just the fact that the system will be more powerful, will have faster RAM, that sort of thing, games should just run better by default, although it's not necessarily guaranteed according to Sony with communication to different developers. But I figure if a game has an unlocked frame rate, or if it has a resolution that's dynamic and can dip kind of low, it might not dip as low, and the frame rate might actually hit a more stable or higher frame rate just in general. So I think the big one for me though that I am curious to see run on this is Dragon's Dogma 2, as that just appears to be like a game that absolutely destroys even certain high-end PCs at this time, although that could also be more on the optimization side. But still, it does appear at least games that aren't necessarily designed or patched for the PS5 Pro will still be able to take advantage of it in some way. Oh, and we've talked about before how with these game subscriptions, while it's great to have all these titles going in, at times there are large numbers of games that actually have to go out, and in fact that appears to be happening next month for PlayStation Plus Extra and Premium. This is posted up, we can see, by a PlayStation Game Size, who points out that on May 21st 24 games will be leaving PlayStation Plus Extra and Premium, and I mean, there's some pretty good titles. A lot of Final Fantasy is leaving. I mean, we have 9, 7, 8, 12, 15, 10, 10-2, as they're pointing out here. Actually, My Friend Pedro, that's a fun game. The Messenger, which is an awesome title. Recommend that to anyone. If you have not played it, absolutely download, check it out. World of Final Fantasy. Again, that's certainly not a great announcement for the service here with all those Final Fantasy games leaving, but again, subscription services, that's how it works. You have these games go in, and then there's some sort of expiration date seemingly behind the scenes that eventually runs up, and here they are now on their way out. But I guess technically down the road, they could get them maybe back into the service, but it is really to be viewed as a revolving door, I guess, unless it's a first-party game, but then there are also licenses that can play in there too, so nothing's really guaranteed with these subscription services, just remember that one. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with Nintendo and their Indie World presentation that will be happening a few hours after this video goes live in the morning. In fact, we can see this is posted up over on their official X account, where they say, tune in tomorrow, April 17th at 7 a.m. Pacific time for roughly 20 minutes of announcements and updates on indie games headed to Nintendo Switch in 2024. So, okay, 10 a.m. Eastern, 20 minutes. I wouldn't necessarily go into this thinking there's going to be some major announcements, but I think we'll see some fun stuff here. Certainly some cozy games, always a chance of a farming simulator or two. Okay, let's talk about what could actually be here that would be fairly exciting, and I'll save the obvious one for last. Plucky Squire. I know Devolver's been showing that off from time to time, but we're kind of waiting on a release date for that one, and this would be a cool place to have it either closing out the show or opening the show. Metal Slug Tactics, I've been curious about what happened there. Again, that's another one that sort of disappeared. It seemed like they just needed more time developing it, but I do like tactics-based games, and seeing Metal Slug sort of in a different light there would be really cool. Pizza Tower is a game that people keep telling me to play, and it seems obvious that a destination for it would be on the Switch, where I feel like it would sell incredibly well. And then, of course, people are going to wonder if there would be any sort of shadow drop for this Indie World presentation. I mean, yeah, I would expect there to be at least one. Doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be some big time release, but it could be a game that maybe you see for the first time, think it looks really cool, and then, oh wait, it's available right away. It's something they tend to do every single time, actually, with these different Indie World presentations. But let's talk about the elephant in the room, the thing that I'm sure many people are going into this crossing their fingers, hoping it'll be there. That's Hollow Knight Silksong. Is this finally the time that we see this game get re-revealed and dropped with some sort of release date? I have seen some people wonder if this would be the shadow drop. I don't think you shadow drop Hollow Knight Silksong because I do believe there's opportunity for marketing behind this game. Not that it wouldn't sell if they decided to just release it like today, right now, but still, you feel like they want to have at least some sort of ramp up with marketing behind it just to help it that much more. In this case, though, it's hard to say Hollow Knight Silksong, well, it's an independent game, would be at an indie showcase because it does sort of feel like it's transcended beyond that now to be a really, really big announcement for any of these companies. Really, Nintendo, Microsoft, Sony, Jeff Keighley at his Summer Game Fest. There are, I'm sure, many different events that would love to have this game there and do that big release date reveal. But I guess technically the first chance at this time would be today, and it wouldn't necessarily feel out of place, but it would certainly overshadow pretty much everything in that indie showcase. So I'm going to say it's not there today. It wouldn't shock me, but I would look more towards some of these big events coming up, which we figure Sony will have a showcase. We know Microsoft's having their own event in June, and we all figure that there will be something from Nintendo, and we know Jeff Keighley's doing Summer Game Fest. So that seems to be about the time period that I would look to see Hollow Knight Silksong get announced again, really, like another big re-reveal for it, have that release date, and it probably coming out here in a few months. So that should be exciting stuff, but for now, let's see what Nintendo has for us with the Indie World here in a couple of hours. Next up, let's talk about Ubisoft, who has officially responded to the situation around Star Wars Outlaws with the Jabba the Hutt mission that does appear to be locked behind some of the more expensive editions that have like DLC and season passes and all kinds of fun stuff that goes right alongside of single-player games, of course. But let's take a look. This was posted up by Eurogamer, who did get the response from a Ubisoft spokesperson, where they say, to clarify, Jabba the Hutt and the Hutt Cartel are one of the main syndicates in Star Wars Outlaws and will be part of the experience for everyone who purchases the game, regardless of edition. The Jabba's Gambit mission is an optional additional mission with the Hutt Cartel along Kay and Nyx's journey across the Outer Rim. This mission will be available to those who purchase the Season Pass or an edition of the game, which includes the Season Pass, as in, give us more than $100 and you can get this mission, which you're never going to explain that in a way that doesn't annoy people. It's like, okay, you're buying the game for $70, but technically $100 or more, you can get this extra mission that I mean, you look at it and go, okay, you're withholding that for the season pass. Yeah, that seems to be what's happening here. So Star Wars Outlaws is still a game that I look at as, it's not really off to the best start when it comes to just PR in general, sort of the public image of it. And now you're seeing things like this with Ubisoft and the season passes. We hear about that early access period where you can get in early if you spend enough money on it. And it just doesn't feel like a game that has that kind of pull. But I feel like this game is also pretty expensive for Ubisoft to put out there, and that's why we're seeing such a push around all these little extra bits and pieces to try to really get you to spend more than $100 on this game, but I just don't think it's interesting enough for the majority of people to do that. I don't know, maybe if there were lightsabers in there or something you could, or just more familiar faces, but it being a new character, kind of playing into the idea of almost a new intellectual property outside of obviously using the Star Wars name, it just doesn't seem like it's going to attract that many people for all these different things to buy, essentially. But let me know what you think about this one, since season passes and DLC that could be there day one isn't necessarily a new thing, but it is still quite annoying. Next up, let's talk about a big sale that is currently ongoing, and these are ones that I tend to be most interested in because it has to do with physical media. And in this case, it's actually some pretty new stuff. In fact, some of these games include things like Dragon's Dogma 2, Princess Peach Showtime, Rise of the Ronin, games that just came out, and it's with GameStop. Now, there is one caveat to this whole thing, and it has to do with these being used games, which, if you've shopped with GameStop, doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get the box art and the disc in the best shape. So just keep that in mind. It could always show up as just the disc in like one of those paper sleeves. But I did take the chance. I ordered a few games. I'll let you know which ones, and maybe I'll post a picture up on the community tab so you can see exactly how they turned out for me. But let's take a look at their page here, as I did write down a few examples of games that would probably be worth looking into. These titles are buy two, get the third free, which means you're going to want to group basically the same pricing for these different games. Like if you get three $50 games instead of $150, it'll be $100. But if you get three like 100 or 3 games, 2 are 50, one's 20, well then the $20 one is free, and you're technically leaving like $30 on the table. Hopefully that makes sense. Anyway, we'll take a look at some of the games here, which includes Princess Peach Showtime. I think that's a good one to pick up if you've been curious about it, because you could end up technically making it one of your free titles then. Unicorn Overlord, awesome title here to get physically. Super Mario Bros. Wonder, of course, any of these Nintendo games that you're going to hear, probably still basically full price. That's just the way Nintendo goes with it. So whenever I see physical Nintendo games on sale, I always, make sure I have it in my collection. Otherwise, I'll pick it up. Rise of the Ronin, awesome title there. Dragon's Dogma 2, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Persona 3 Reload, Helldivers 2, Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, Pikmin 4, Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, another awesome game there, Tekken 8, and then Grand Blue Fantasy Relink. Now, there's still tons of other games here. I just went through and picked out a few, as well as some of the newer ones. The games that I did pick out, though, I grabbed 3 of them. That included Dragon's Dogma 2, Tekken 8, and Grand Blue Fantasy Relink. So for me, Grand Blue Fantasy, which would have cost $54, ended up being free. And I believe GameStop also has like free shipping if it's over $75 or $79, which mine also fell into that pricing structure. So for me, I'm actually pretty happy to be able to pick out 3 of these games, with one of them being free, and you divide it up, it ends up going like, what, $35 or $40 each. So to me, not bad. And again, physical media specifically, we end up doing a lot of sales around digital games. I know people like to pick up games on sale and can add them to their collection on their bookshelf. In this case, it's one of those rare occasions where we get something like that for even newer titles, in this case with, yes, used games from GameStop. So again, reminder, doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get in the best of shape. So crossing my fingers and hoping that all these things show up, at least with the box. Obviously, no manual to worry about anymore. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about Take-Two and some layoffs that apparently are happening here. And it's unfortunate because you look at Take-Two and you figure, out of all these companies, they're one of the few that you really assume would be fine and wouldn't be laying people off, especially since, let's face it, they're going to release GTA 6 to some massive sales numbers. I mean, it's going to be absolutely ridiculous when those first reports come through, but we can see this is posted up and reported on by Reuters, where they say Take-Two Interactive Software will lay off about 5% of its workforce. They love to use percentages, by the way, because you look at 5%, you're like, oh, okay, that's not too bad. Or around 600 employees, the publisher of the Grand Theft Auto franchise said on Tuesday. Yeah, 600 employees sounds way worse than 5% of the workforce. So you get why they lead with the percentages when they have to announce these different things. The company will also scrap several projects in development as part of a cost reduction plan, which is expected to result in total charges of up to $200 million. And obviously, they're not going to name any of the projects. They declined to do so here. And you can imagine what kind of got cut then. I'm sure people are like in their mind, oh, Bully 2. It's possible. There could also have been some different remasters or attempts at revivals of different intellectual properties. There could have been like a Midnight Club in there or something where they looked at it and went, you know what? Licensing all these cars and doesn't necessarily make sense for us at this time. Just kind of examples and guesses being thrown around out there, but this definitely puts everything into perspective and go, wow, even Take-Two, who has sold, I mean, insane numbers of GTA 5, still charts, by the way, in all around the world, they have to lay people off. Incredibly profitable, making a ton of revenue as of their last fiscal year. And really at this time, it's pretty clear that Take-Two's not expecting GTA 6 to come out this fiscal year that they're in now. It's probably going to end up being the second half of 2025. It would fall into their next fiscal year. And in their mind, they're probably just like, okay, we're going to start cutting back on some of our expenses so that we can basically even out and keep that same profit margin. Because yeah, at the end of the day, it comes down to investors and how can they make that bottom line look as good as possible. Well, they decided we'll lay off 600 people and cancel a bunch of projects and never say what they were. So take your best guess at what they canceled. And of course, hopefully all the different employees that are laid off through this process, which Take-Two says is going to basically run to the end of this year, are able to find new work quickly. And before we go to the comment of the day, we're going to take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I ask, will Hollow Knight Silksong show up at Nintendo's Indie World? Should we just ask this question over and over for these different presentations until it finally happens? Because 71% say no, 29% say yes. You know what? I do wonder if this was just a full-blown Nintendo Direct, like, hey, tune in tomorrow for 40 minutes of Nintendo announcements and big game titles for the rest of 2024, if people would look at that and say, okay, well, yeah, that's where Hollow Knight will be announced. Maybe. I do think people look at Indie World and they don't match it up with kind of the hype around Hollow Knight currently. So maybe this is a good spot to announce it again with a release date, since it would certainly catch some people off guard. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from El Randable, says, not interested in paying $600 for marginally better lighting. Well, that might be what happens with the PlayStation 6, potentially. I think we are to that point of diminishing returns when it comes to visuals, especially, think about this. The PS4 Pro to the PS5, while we did have those load times that increased substantially, obviously going from mechanical drive to an SSD, I'm sure there are many people who looked at the PS4 versions of certain games and the PS5 and they're like, I guess it looks kind of different. So now you go, okay, PS5 Pro to PlayStation 6, it's still 4K or it's 8K and 8K. Like, resolution was at least an easy way to tell the difference between them in terms of upgrades. But now you look at a PS5 Pro and then a PS6, that's still going to cut down the jump we would have from the PS5 to the PS6. And those diminishing returns already kicked in from the PS4 Pro to the PS5. I mean, it's going to be really hard, I think, for people to tell the difference and understand why they have to spend potentially $600 for a PlayStation 6 in 2028 if their PS5 ends up playing these games just fine anyway, especially with a prolonged cross-gen period. So I think going into next gen, Sony and Microsoft need to figure out another way to maybe sell their system outside of just graphics, because I think that's just about used up. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. Was Nintendo's Indie World presentation coming up in a few hours. Of course, leave some predictions down below in the comments. And GameStop with their current sale for these physical used games. Let me know your recent experiences from GameStop ordering and having them ship you used games, and of course, any recommendations you can give people down below. Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.